Well, ladies and gentlemen, yesterday during my live stream, people asked me what is the best possible outcome for Donald Trump and the administration as it pertains to this conflict within the Middle East. And I said an immediate ceasefire. Well, this morning, take a look at what's being reported. Iran asked Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Oman to ask Trump to press Israel to agree to immediate ceasefire. In return, Iran to offer flexibility in nuclear negotiations with the United States. Now, what does that mean in terms of flexibility? Does that mean they're willing to give up any uranium enrichment in exchange for keeping their regime intact? Because right now it seems like there's some self-preservation that the Iranians are understanding and diagnosing, to where Israel definitely wants a regime change. It's being reported now the United States is sending an aircraft carrier, a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, to the Middle East. There's also the thought, because Israel cannot destroy the specific nuclear facilities, some of the bigger ones are deep underground, the United States would have to bring in B-2 bombers. And so the obviously they have massive payload, they can handle it, and they can drop the heavy weaponry that would be required to penetrate well beneath the surface and to really affect a lot of the nuclear facilities within Iran. I don't think this is what Israel wants. Israel wants a regime change. They want all of the nuclear facilities completely gone. Could Trump try and facilitate something here to where it's not appeasement to Israel? It's more so, let's just keep the peace. And maybe we do, because you would have to figure, if the baseline, this is what was reported, Iran said it's a baseline 3.67% enrichment level, which Israel's going to say they're lying about. They're really enriching a lot more than that. But now they're saying they're going to be flexible on it. So what does that mean? Does that mean no uranium enrichment, if this is even true? Because we know Iran has struck back severely against Israel in Tel Aviv, and there's been what they dub significant hits to Israel in response. And we knew there had to be a strong response from Iran after the initial strikes, which targeted nuclear scientists and precision airstrikes that went into apartment buildings and killed Iranian political officials, as well as targeting the nuclear sites, obviously. So this could be great news if Trump decides to go with this. You could say, well, this is a cop-out. This is Iran trying to stall. It's a stalling tactic, and they really don't want peace. They just want to regather and recoup. And there's also the talk about them closing down and shutting down and blockading the Strait of Hormuz, which would be catastrophic for countries like India and China, who rely on the oil exports straight out of that area. And it would be catastrophic in terms of just the world oil situation. Because right now we've got bullish price action on crude oil, believe it or not. It's gone completely stagnant. It's gone flat. Actually, when you look at the pre-hours versus where it is, where it opened up this morning, it traded lower. And so it seems like there's more bullishness in terms of maybe an immediate ceasefire. Again, Israel's going to say, well, don't do this. We have them on the run. Let's completely destroy them. Netanyahu was talking on Fox News yesterday, trying to tell any boomer that would listen. And it's all the fear mongering, of course. So the question is, what will the Trump administration do? Is this serious, or is this a stall tactic by Iran when it comes to a potential ceasefire? They're saying flexibility and nuclear negotiations. Well, the flexibility would have to be zero enrichment. And what would happen is there would be eased sanctions on Iran, and there would also likely be Iran being involved in some type of nuclear or uranium enrichment de-escalation, to where they would scale it back over a certain period of time, and maybe they would be involved in a program at a regional level, not domestically, in terms of a uranium enrichment program for them to save face. That all can happen and kind of help them save face in terms of them maybe agreeing to this. But the number one thing that it would have to be, because it's pretty much known now, I'm not going to say it's 100%, but what was reported was that the administration said there's zero enrichment. It was also reported that the administration had some wiggle room and that they were secretly going to quietly agree to Iran being able to enrich possibly to the Obama level of 3.67, but then Trump came out the next day and said, no, that's not true. Trump just says, well, they can't have a nuclear bomb. Well, what does that mean? That means zero enrichment at all? I would imagine that's what I would interpret it as, what it's meaning based off of Trump's own statements in regards to the 3% enrichment. If they're talking about flexibility, it's going to have to be no enrichment. I believe that's the only thing the United States will accept at this point when it comes to Iran, especially now with what happened in terms of Israel striking Iran. But what does Iran do? I mean, you can try and save face if they really want, because they could say, well, this is self-preservation. If Israel gets the U.S. involved with the B-2 bombers, this is going to be a big problem. And they already have their own issues domestically within their own country in terms of a lot of their citizens being against their current regime. And so could they say, well, self-preservation, we don't want the U.S. involved. We want to do it. And now it's also been reported, I'm going to go to this, Iran's military and political leadership are prepared to give up uranium enrichment to preserve the regime. And see, this would make sense in theory. But the question is, well, if it's a ceasefire, that doesn't automatically mean there's going to be a peace deal. And obviously, Israel at this point, they want the regime gone. And Netanyahu's admitted that he wants the regime gone. And so this would, for Trump, this would be a huge thing. I said if we could get this wouldn't even be a war. This is not even classified as a war. We get an immediate ceasefire. Could you imagine within a day or two where Trump strips Iran of any enrichment and they just have to be in part of a regional program, a nuclear program, and there's no domestic enrichment allowed from Iran just so they can kind of keep their regime? Imagine that. See, that's a huge win for Trump. But this could also be a huge loss if this doesn't end up happening and it becomes a bigger regional conflict and it becomes a longer conflict to where it truly gets classified as a war. And then you bring in the offensive help, because right now you've got Charlie Kirk and others. They're saying, well, we all support, and he's trying to frame like young people. It's like, oh, all the young people support Israel, but they don't want to be offensive. It's just defensive. So that's what they're trying to frame it as. The reality is, I think Trump's hard line is there's not going to be troops deployed, but he will use offensive weaponry. This is just what I would speculate. If this doesn't end up happening in terms of diplomacy, and we would think that there's very little chance of it happening because Iran's already been struck and they've returned. Although, I don't know. I mean, with these Middle Eastern conflicts, we've seen where things escalate to a certain point and then it comes to a standstill. I mean, these countries have struck each other in the past, albeit at lesser extents. But this doesn't automatically mean there's going to be this wide-scale war, and the war would look differently rather than some type of crazy invasion because of where the countries are located. This is an aerial conflict, it looks like, but they would need the U.S. help in terms of the weaponry and the B-2 bombers, the payload that they can handle to drop the proper missiles and other ballistics onto and within the caves and underneath the caves underground, which is where their major nuclear facilities are in terms of their enrichment levels. And they believe they're lying about their enrichment levels. They're at least at 60%. I mean, if people want to say, well, this is weapons of mass destruction 2.0, unless you think an independent international agency, the Atomic Agency, is lying, if they're at 60%, yes, they are close to a nuclear bomb. Now, if it's just 60%, they're not there yet, but they're about 2 or 3 weeks away. They could just be lying. They could already be there. We don't know. But I'm saying independent agencies have said they're at 60% enrichment, which, yes, that is close. I'm not trying to defend Israel here. I'm just saying that's the reality of it. I'm not saying we should go to war over it. I think that's ridiculous. And I said it was bad when Israel did that and we were trying for diplomacy. The point here is, though, we can save it. And I said yesterday, if we can find a ceasefire to where Iran is in a corner and their regime is worried about their own survival and it's a survival instinct, and they say, we really can't close the Strait of Hormuz. It's going to be a big problem with our main trading partners, India and China, in terms of where we export oil. And it's just not an option. And if you do that, then there's going to be direct U.S. involvement very likely anyways. So you really can't do that. You don't have the avenue. That's why there's only like a 30% chance of it happening. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. Maybe if Iran throws caution to the wind and says, we're done, we're going to do whatever we have to do, maybe that ends up happening. We don't know. The point here is that if we somehow get this immediate ceasefire with Iran agreeing to 0% enrichment with sanction relief for Iran to allow them to kind of act like they at least got something in these negotiations, along with maybe them being part of a regional nuclear program with them de-escalating their own uranium enrichment levels by the month through a program. That's probably what would happen. And so this is just, if this ends up happening, it just seems so unlikely. But who knows? Maybe Iran is in a really bad spot. I mean, they just hit back pretty significantly. Now, how significantly Israel is going to say it's the worst thing ever because they want U.S. support. So it's a fog of war thing. How bad did Israel get struck by Iran within the past 3 or 4 days in response to the initial strikes? They're saying they're hitting civilian areas. A lot of the missiles have been deterred by the Iron Dome defense system. But you can see Iran urgently signaling it wants to end hostilities and restart nuclear talks. The question is, does this, in terms of what? So they're going to agree to 0% enrichment. You think the United States, who was already negotiating with them before the Israeli strikes, you think the U.S. now is going to say, no, we'll agree to like 2%, 3% enrichment? I think it's going to have to be zero enrichment, and we would give them some form of sanction relief for them to kind of walk out of here with something. That would be my guess. And Israel would likely not be happy because Israel knows they have Iran on the run right now. They just need U.S. support. But Trump is saying, you're not going to get it. We're done. We're sick of it. It's defensive. We'll help Israel just on the defense. And that's why there's been reports of U.S. and the U.K. combining to shoot down certain Iranian missiles. Iran seeks talks with the U.S. and Israel to end hostilities. There was rumors that Iran has said, well, the U.S. can't join. If the U.S. doesn't join, we're going to agree to talks. So there's conditions to it. But the question is this real, or is this just a stalling tactic by the Iranians? Iran claims it will resume nuclear negotiations if the U.S. stays out of fight, Wall Street Journal has reported. Wall Street Journal has been wrong on a few different things. I mean, there's a lot of this news that's just not, it's just blatantly false, I'll be honest. So this is the type of stuff to where it's like, these are breadcrumbs for us to try and hope that this is resolved quickly because it would be good for the administration. Especially, you're talking about 0% enrichment for Iran, and there's no war. There's no Middle Eastern war. This is not classified as a, if this happens. The problem is though, like a ceasefire, those things, they're very whimsical. They're not, it doesn't automatically say, well, this is going to be the end of it. So even if we get some type of ceasefire, there's other hurdles unless Iran is seriously open to doing this, to where they sign on to something that would say zero enrichment, sanction relief for Iran in return, and then Iran being part of a regional nuclear pact, and Iran downscaling their nuclear enrichment levels by the month that have to be reported to the Atomic Agency of Energy and the international agency there. So that's really what we're looking for here. And because otherwise what happens is Iran just hit Israel. Israel is going to use that as a catalyst to say we need help from the U.S. And Israel is also going to say to the United States, and this is what Netanyahu has said, it's read between the lines, we need what you have to completely destroy these nuclear facilities. But the thing is, what Israel has to understand is it's very unlikely they're going to get a regime change. I mean, there was a rumor that came out yesterday that Israel could have assassinated the supreme leader of Iran, but Trump nixed it. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know. But considering the precision on the first strikes by Israel, they probably do have the capability to get something like that done with Palantir and all the technology that they have. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I think the hope is that there's some type of ceasefire as soon as possible for the administration. Right now, the administration is holding firm on a defensive only position. That means there's no offensive weaponry the problem is we fund Israel. So there's going to be indirect offensive weaponry that's used by Israel that was funded by the United States. But Trump is saying, of our own volition, we're not going to go at this offensively. It's more of defensive help to Israel. And that's what all the conservative pundits right now, or I shouldn't say all of them, but the main ones, a lot of them are saying, well, it's just defensive. We want to help our ally Israel defensively, but it's their war on the offense. But the question is, they don't have the capacity to destroy these nuclear sites because of where they're located. So then you bring in the B-2 bombers that have significantly higher payloads that can drop the strategic weaponry that's needed to annihilate the nuclear facilities, and I'm guessing that's what Israel wants. But Trump has said that's not going to happen because he just wants to go at this defensively and help Israel in terms of on the defense. So we'll have to see how this works out. But I mean, this is big stuff. If Iran is serious about it, it's hard to take this for anything other than a grain of salt, unfortunately, because there's been so much stuff that's come out about the U.S. and Iran nuclear talks, and we don't really know what to believe. I do think Trump did want diplomacy. He did want a nuclear deal with Iran. I don't know what the exact numbers would have been in terms of their enrichment. I know Israel says they're constantly lying about their enrichment. So if you agree to a deal at around 3.67%, but I mean, say what you want about it, it's just so much better than the alternative of a never-ending Middle Eastern war that the U.S. would be dragged into. So even if it's 3.67% or now, it seems like we could probably get a better deal if this is true, if they're being genuine about wanting to negotiate. Now, maybe they're not. I mean, we've negotiated with them for months and months and months, and nothing's come of it. So what are negotiations really going to do outside of giving Iran time to regroup? That's another thing you have to take into account. It depends. It would have to be based off of intelligence. Is Iran serious about this? And for us to do some type of ceasefire, I mean, this is like Ukraine and Russia, and this is what Russia says. Why would we agree to a ceasefire if there's no chance of a peace deal? And Ukraine is just wanting a ceasefire to delay a Russian offensive into Ukraine when they've got the advantage. I mean, there's been strikes back and forth. This is a different type of war. It's not a land invasion, so it's different. But the perspective and the concept of the ceasefire to delay something would be a similar strategy that Iran could be using. They could be serious. They could want this. They could say, we know that Israel has extreme power when it comes to how they influence the U.S. And if they get the U.S. involved, they definitely have the ability to destabilize Iran completely and create a regime change, which is something that we cannot have. And obviously, as the government of Iran, they don't want that because they would all be removed or killed. And so they're saying, well, instead of doing that, let's just agree to lower level uranium enrichment. It would be 0%, I would imagine, unless Trump actually really wants to get this over with and he agrees to something. But it would probably be no uranium enrichment and sanction relief to help them save face with their people, along with them being part of some type of nuclear program regionally, not domestically. There'd be 0% domestic enrichment because the U.S. would have the leverage if Iran is begging to come to the table and talk with the U.S. now on a new nuclear deal. But it's also been reported that Iran wants the United States to stay out of this war if there is some type of ceasefire, which you would imagine. I mean, we're already involved in it, but it is a defensive position Trump has taken. And I will reiterate what I said yesterday. Netanyahu formally asked Trump to join this war, whatever that means. I mean, it's like, my guess is on the offensive in terms of using U.S. weaponry in a way. I mean, right now there are planes that are pivoting to, I mean, you can see this. This was reported yesterday. Strategic moves by the United States to reassign some of their military planes to the Middle East, specifically planes that are used for refueling mid-flight. And so it seems like whether or not this is just a precaution or maybe an offensive escalation. I mean, the thing is it seems like it's setting up to where the U.S. will help Israel. They'll have to help Israel destroy these nuclear plants if it comes to that. Now, the hope is that maybe there is some type of ceasefire. It seems unlikely that that can be done. I mean, whether or not Iran wants to cooperate with this, it seems outside of them being extremely nervous about their regime getting overthrown. Why would you give up your nuclear program when you just got hit by Israel? It's like, it's counterintuitive. It doesn't make any sense unless they feel extremely threatened. So I don't know. I mean, but even if you feel threatened, wouldn't you want to have that program even more? Maybe they're saying, well, maybe they're saying we can salvage this. We want to come back to the negotiating table. We just want to keep our nuclear facilities intact. I don't know. But either way, guys, that's going to do it for this one. Make sure you like the video down below. Also follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.